Guoba Swan here with a guide on the coolest new DoT unit in town. She is so much fun, better in practice than what maths can tell you, and can even kind of work as a supportive unit if you're not interested in damage over time. In this guide, I'll explain everything you need to know about Black Swan in order to maximize her potential, by explaining her kit in depth, reviewing her Eidolons, calculating her best light cones and relics, then discussing pros and cons, and finishing with her best teams and synergies. I will also tackle the two main questions for Black Swan: does she need Kafka, and does Kafka need her? So like and sub if this helped, let me know below what you think of her, and let's begin. Black Swan is a 5-star wind Nihility unit, and her debuff niche as part of the Nihility roster is applying her special wind shear variant, Arcana, alongside many different debuffs. At level 80, she has a base HP of 1086, her base attack is a high 659, and her base defense is 485. She has an OK speed of 102 and an average energy cost at 120. For trace priority, you want to start with her talent, and then follow with her ultimate alongside her skill, and finishing with her basics. So let's check out her wall of text of a kit. Let's start by introducing Arcana, her special damage over time debuff. It has many ways of being applied, as we'll later go on to in depth. Arcana is a variant of wind shear and counts for any conditions that require a wind shear, such as the Fermata light cone. It has a permanent base stack of 1 on enemies, can even be applied when they enter battle, and the more you stack, the higher the DoT multiplier increases. It will reset to 1 on enemy turns after they take the Arcana damage. Arcana can be detonated at any point, and as it is a wind shear, it can be detonated by Sampo E4 and of course Kafka. We'll also see how sometimes it can even be detonated by Guoba and Luca just after though. Her talent, Loom of Fate's Caprese, is a good way to continue the explanation. It introduces our first way of Arcana being applied, and that is when an enemy takes DoT damage at the start of their turn. It's not when DoT is applied. This is per instance of DoT, so any unique DoT like a shock, a break shock, a road from the patient's light cone, and even Arcana itself. Wind shear from Sampo can stack up to 5 stacks, but only counts as a singular DoT by the way. All these damage over time ticks will happen first before Arcana every single time, and thus contribute to Arcana's stack count before it explodes and resets. The talent is also responsible for the Arcana damage multiplier, and leveling this increases the base damage as well as the stacking multiplier increase. Arcana will reset to 1 after the enemy receives damage from it, and it can stack up to 50 times for a total multiplier of 840% of her attack at level 10. You won't be getting to 50 stacks ever in my experience though, unless you have E6 or you're in Simulated Universe, but you can hit peaks of nearly 40 in some optimized scenarios, and in my simulations I saw peaks of 20 to 30 stacks. Finally, this talent introduces some bonuses to stacking Arcana, though these only apply upon enemy turns, not from detonations. At 3 or more stacks, this Arcana does a single attack to adjacent enemies like a blast attack, whilst also applying Arcana to them. At 7 or more, the Arcana damage will ignore 20% of the enemy's defense, and so will that blast attack from 3 stacks. You will be hitting over 7 stacks in a good team every single enemy turn. Basic does no meaningful damage but applies Arcana, and then has a chance to apply a stack of Arcana for every unique DoT element type on the enemy she attacks. Since Arcana counts as wind shear, this means she can always apply 2 stacks herself alone. This means she can also stack up to 5 Arcana in her one basic, provided the enemy has shock, burn, and bleed on top of her own DoT. This doesn't mean you need to go 3 DoT units though to maximize this stack count. Her skill is a blast attack, also dealing very little damage and inflicting Arcana on every enemy hit. She also reduces the defense of every enemy hit. When you have her first Ascension passive unlocked, her skill gains the same properties as her basic, applying additional stacks based on unique element DoT types on the enemies she targets. This won't apply to the blast targets, only the central one, but this means her skill can apply 1 Arcana to 3 targets and then an additional 4 to the center one. Her ultimate will attack all enemies and inflicts a new debuff on them, Epiphany, for 2 turns. Enemies that are affected by this have a 25% universal vulnerability modifier. However, this only takes effect if it's the enemy's turn, being pretty much a DoT only vulnerability without benefiting detonations in most cases. It's really weird to make it like this, but whatever. Either way, this will buff DoT damage a ton, and also her Arcana explosions. This ultimate also makes Arcana count as all DoT types, meaning her basic and skill will apply 5 Arcana to the target she chooses without any external help, as Arcana will now register as a shock, bleed, and burn even without these DoTs applied onto the enemy. This also means Gwennyfan's ultimate can detonate Arcana, and Luca's enhanced basic can too, but only during the Epiphany duration. Finally, this ultimate also makes the next time enemies take their Arcana tick, not reset their stacks, once per Epiphany. Meaning if I have 20 stacks on an enemy and they were altered previously, they'll take 20 stacks worth of damage and still keep them, allowing me to stack even more Arcana for their next turn and completely blow them up. Her technique finally will apply Arcana at a high base chance to every enemy with a half chance to apply another one, repeating until she misses her debuff application. So 150% base chance, which is guaranteed, to 75% to 37.5%, etc. It's a bit of a funky one, but it doesn't attack enemies, so it's a free damage bonus to your runs. Her Ascension 4 passive grants 2 other ways of applying her Arcana, and this is getting annoying at this point, but every time an enemy enters combat, they have a chance of having it applied. Enemies faster than her or spawning ahead of her, like in Pure Fiction, thus will take damage before she even does anything. The second new way is when the enemy receives DoT from an ally in an attack, she can apply another stack of Arcana up to 3 times. This is for detonations and doesn't work when the enemy takes the actual DoT damage, that's what the talent does. This checks for unique dots but not element types, so if I skill on Kafka with Arcana, Kafka's Shock and another DoT, I will get 3 Arcana stacks. An ultimate from Kafka on top results in another 3. This can work on every enemy hit too, so Kafka's ultimate is going to go crazy for AoE stacking. Finally, Black Swan gains a damage percent boost equal to 60% of her effect hit rate up to 72% damage, and yes, this applies to dots. This will result in needing 120% effect hit rate to maximize this buff, and funnily enough, we want this much effect hit rate anyway. She will gain 28% attack, 10% effect hit rate, and 14.4% wind damage bonus in her trace stat bonuses. Let's quickly review her Eidolons after that super long explanation. Her E1 is pretty insane, I'm not gonna lie. At E1, when she's in battle, enemies will receive a 25% resistance shred debuff respective to whatever DoT is applied to them. Arcana is a wind shear, so that's a permanent 25% wind res shred. Not only is this insane for dots, it also introduces some out of DoT supportive capabilities. Throw Patience is all you need on her, and suddenly she's a lightning DPS support. Put Trend on your preservation unit and maybe she can help out fire DPS. Even break dots can contribute to this. This is at best a 25% DPS increase to Black Swan and any ally it can boost, and even with other res buffs and debuffs, like from Ruame's ult, it's still very strong because of how rare these buffs are. Her E2 makes enemies with Arcana, so basically any enemy, inflict 6 additional stacks to adjacent targets upon being defeated. This is great for AoE fights. Her E4 reduces enemy F-res by 10% during Epiphany, and then enemies defeated during it or taking their turn give Black Swan 8 energy, once per enemy, once per Epiphany. This is great in AoE for tons of extra energy and will make her rotation shorter. In single target though, you won't notice anything different about her energy. Her final Eidolon gives her a chance to apply Arcana on targets attacked by Black Swan's allies, not by herself. But then, for every single possible Arcana application, she will have a 50% fixed chance, so not changeable by effect hit rate, to apply another one. This means every single way she has applied a stack of Arcana before now basically applies 1.5 stacks on average. It's a pretty OP way to end things, and you can definitely see some 50 stack Arcanas at E6. After all those kit shenanigans, let's move on to her builds. And let's start with her best relics. Without a doubt it will be the Prisoner set. This gives her Death Ignore, which is already strong, but this perfectly synergizes with her Death Ignore on her Arcana, her Death Reduction on her skill, and her Light Cone as we will see in a bit. It is by far her best. If you don't have a full set, you could do a mix and match of 2-piece Wind set, 2-piece Pioneer, the new Debuffer set, and any 2-piece Attack Relic set. The 4-piece Wind set shouldn't really be used unless you know what you're doing and optimize your team for it. In my simulations, the Wind set's advance forward desynced Black Swan so much from her allies that having no relic bonuses was actually a tiny bit better, because apart from the advance, the Wind set is just a 10% damage bonus. For planers, I would farm the Glamoth set. At 160 speed and even 135 speed, it's just really good on her. Space Seeding Station is pretty much equal to 135 speed Glamoth though if you have it. Pan Cosmic is the best maths wise, but the world sucks to farm with the Celestial Differentiator, and in my opinion it's not worth the damage increase, but maybe you can use Relic Remains for it. For main stats you want to go for an effect hit rate chest, speed boots, attack percent or wind damage percent orb, and an attack percent rope. Effect hit rate chests should always be prioritized unless you can hit 120% effect hit rate without it, which is very difficult even with a light cone with this stat. Her orb depends on her teammates and substats, so basically go whichever has the best stats. Overall, Mage team prefers attack percent, and Asa team prefers damage percent, for example. Energy rope on Black Swan is a no-go outside of perhaps pure fiction. An extra ult here and there isn't worth it, and results in a 12% DPS loss. For a stat goal, you'll want to hit 3k attack, 135 speed, and 120% effect hit rate. If you're a god roller and want to min-max your Black Swan, hitting more speed as well as attack will be nice, and Raw May can help with speed requirements. Her action order is more important than super high speeds though, so don't worry, and we'll see more about that in teams. For Lycones, let's discuss her signature, Reforged Remembrance. It gives her 40% effect hit rate at S1, which is perfect, equal to Eyes of Praise hit rate buff at S5. Then, when the wearer deals damage to enemies inflicted with the 4 unique element dot types, she will gain a stack of profit, up to 4 stacks. The thing is, she doesn't lose these stacks and her ultimate will stack it up to 4 by itself, since Arcana will count as all 4 dot elements during Epiphany. This means you don't need any help from dot allies, as after one ultimate, she will have a permanent 4 profit stacks for the whole fight. These profit stacks increase her attack, and make her dots and dots only ignore enemy defense, for a total of 20% attack and 20.8% def ignore on dots at 4 stacks. This cone is pretty nice and is of course easily her best in slot and by far 20% better than the other good options. With her skills def reduction at 20.8%, her def ignore from this cone at 28.8%, the prisoner set giving 18% def ignore, and 7 stack Arcana ignoring 20% def on enemy turns, you're sitting at 87.6% def ignore on your Arcana, equaling an 85% DPS increase. Getting to 100% def ignore from a resolution light cone on another unit will result in a further 14% DPS increase. Other light cone options include basically any effect hit rate light cone. She loves this stat that much. This is Incessant Rain, which will also provide some additional damage benefits for the team. Eyes of the Prey S5 is her free-to-play friendly option and pretty much her best and most accessible cone outside of her signature. Tutorial is a free light cone if you started before 1.1 second half and decent on her too, since she can activate it with her skills defense reduction. The extra ults are like an energy rope on her, but with no damage increase passive, this cone is not beating Eyes of the Prey. Most of its benefits are just from the 40% effect hit rate. You could also use this on another dot DPS since she can fulfill the conditions for them. I didn't calculate non-effect hit rate cones because my substat distribution doesn't allow for it. You need 17 average effect hit rate subs at worst when including a main stat to hit 120% hit rate. So is another light cone worth the pain? Either way, from other sources, It's Showtime, the new Pentacon cone, and Goodnight Sleep Well are competitive with Eyes of the Prey if you do have 120% effect hit rate, but it's hard to recommend because of how difficult it is to get all those subs. For energy rotations, she will get a 4-turn rotation with 4 skills or 3 skills 1 basic if you get a kill or external energy. This basic can also be replaced by a Haw-Haw ultimate, and she can also allow you to run skill point neutral Black Swan. Ideally, you are using her skill frequently, if not all the time in AoE, but if you want to opt for a skill point positive rotation, that will take 5 turns to reach her ultimate. Now before we tackle teams, let's discuss Black Swan's pros and cons. For pros, we have high dot damage. Her multipliers go quite high, and in Kafka teams, she will contribute more damage than Kafka herself, considering detonated Arcana as Black Swan's damage. We also have damage amping power. You have Death Shred, Epiphany, Res Shredder E1. She does a lot of different things whilst also doing crazy damage already. This means she kinda can be a supportive unit outside of dot teams if you love her enough, but she's of course best used in dot comps. We have easy and AoE dot applications. Enemies are always going to have 1 Arcana on them at least. This means without lifting a finger, Black Swan has her dot applied and is guaranteed to do damage when they take their turn. This means for pure fiction where enemies can spawn ahead of you, they'll still take damage without Swan even taking action. Her power also increases the more enemies you'll have. The more enemies there are, the more blast procs on her Arcana, and the more Arcana that spreads, and so forth. It's like a plague. For cons, we have backloaded damage. Yes, she deals a ton. Yes, it's not as backloaded as some units, but her attack multipliers are terrible outside of her dot. This means enemy turns and ally detonations are key to maximizing her damage and front-loading it. She also really enjoys having dot units to apply her Arcana stacks. By herself, she isn't applying all that much. Finally, her base chances mean even at 120% effect hit rate, you aren't guaranteed to hit all your Arcana applications versus endgame enemies. It will be about 86% versus 40% effect resistance enemies. Now let's finish with teams. The way you will team build with her on your team is by pairing her with a dot unit and a damage amplifier and then a sustain. If you want to run 3 dots, you'd replace the damage amplifier. Best units to run in the second dot slots are Kafka, then E4 Sampo. Winifan and Luca won't be close to these two. The best damage amplifier by far for damage over time comps is Ruan Mei, but Asta and Pella will work too. The way you'll build your team speedwise is by having your sustain and support ahead of Black Swan and your secondary dot. Then your second dot unit will go after Black Swan for a full order of buffer, to sustain, to Black Swan, to second dot. This ensures your first 2 units can activate Kafka's talent for shock application, and makes it so Black Swan will apply Arcana for Kafka or Sampo to detonate just after. This is just for optimizing your team, and if you don't want to speed tune, don't worry too much. Kafka being faster than Black Swan is fine too, it's just a minor optimization. If you don't run Kafka, the sustain being faster isn't really needed, but the support should still be faster ideally to apply debuffs or buffs before your dot units attack. Her absolute best team will be Black Swan, Kafka, Ruan Mei and Ho-Ho. This is the standard that Worlds will be aiming for, combining the power of Black Swan's damage amp and high damage, Kafka's universal and frequent detonations, Ruan Mei's insane damage boosting power and dot synergies, and Ho-Ho's energy and attack percent. But do Kafka teams necessarily need Black Swan, and does Black Swan need Kafka? Before we move on to simulations, maths does not mean reality, it just gives us a good idea of it. Practice is very important too, and Black Swan feels so amazing to use in combat in my experience. The thrill of big Arcana nukes, easy application, and high damage from detonations makes Black Swan in my experience just a way better Sampo for Kafka. So in my Black Swan team simulations, Kafka is Black Swan's best dot partner. The only time it is close is when considering purely wind weak pure single target, where Sampo can come out ahead by a percentage at very high investment. This is most likely the case for Luca 2 for physical week. Do note also that in these simulations, Kafka does not have her signature, which greatly improves her own potential, the prisoner set's potential, and increases Arcana stacks. That icon just really keeps getting better and better. If the enemy has lightning weakness, it goes back in favor of Kafka. When considering 2 or more enemies, Kafka is best for Black Swan again, and in any AoE fight, Kafka rules. It is nice to know though that you don't need Kafka for Black Swan. Sampo is a fine substitute, but you want at least E4 Sampo. E4 Sampo can detonate any wind shears, provided the enemy has 5 stacks of wind shear, and that can be his own or Arcana. Now onto Kafka teams, comparing Black Swan to Sampo this time instead of Kafka to Sampo. Black Swan is just an upgrade to Sampo in any scenario. In simulations from God's Cell from Kafka mains, who also simulated in a single target scenario, Black Swan is always an upgrade. E0 S0 is a 9% increase over Sampo, who is supposed to be a single target powerhouse. Her E1 and S1 increases gap even more so. In AoE, Black Swan is much stronger than Sampo. So overall, you won't be disappointed in replacing Sampo with her, but Sampo will still be fine if you don't want to pull for Swan. I hope this video helped. Let me know below your impressions on Swan and if you're pulling. Thanks to my awesome YouTube members, thanks for watching and have a good day.